Hey folks, Brian Blessing here to get you ready for the NFL. Let's get to the line movements, the injury news, notes, updates. Always making the rounds here in Las Vegas. Glad to be on board at bangthebook.com, the sports betting podcast. Great follow on Twitter as well, at Bang the Book. Let's not waste time. A lot of games to get to. We start with Tennessee and Cleveland. Tennessee 7-point favorite, down to the 5.5, 6 range. A little support here for the home dog Cleveland. Hard to imagine the Browns, with all the players they got in the draft, are knee-deep in contention for the first pick overall in the NFL again, looking for that first win. Jacksonville will be at Indianapolis. Jacksonville is -3, -20, indicating that this is a number that could likely go to 3.5. So keep tabs on that. Cincinnati's at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh 6-point favorite, down to the 5.5, 5 range. Totals 41.5. Nice road win for Pittsburgh at Kansas City. The one thing that is usually pretty prevalent here is Pittsburgh's offense struggles on the road but fares well at home. Could be a sneaky overplay in this game with a total of 41.5. Baltimore, Minnesota. Minnesota's a 5.5-point favorite. Total on the game is 39.5. This is not a game for the faint of heart. Two defenses that will flat out punch you in the mouth. And keep an eye on Minnesota, because I think down the road, the Aaron Rodgers injury, which we'll talk about, could have big impact and opportunity for Minnesota to win the division, maybe get a home game in the playoffs, and maybe be dangerous big picture. Let's go with the Jets in Miami. Miami's -3, -20. Another game could go to 3.5. Total on the game is 38.5. Dolphins coming off a nice rallying victory against Atlanta. Carolina at Chicago. This is a game, Carolina -3, -0.25. You are going to see 3.5, so I'll tell you on this particular game. Now, the New Orleans-Green Bay game. This is the one that is really intriguing on a number of fronts. The general consensus from the odds makers is between 8.5 and 10 points, depending who you talk to. The drop off, the difference with Rodgers, the quarterback, going down to Hundley. Now, here's a game that advanced lines had Green Bay a 6.5-point favorite. And you get the Rodgers injury, it swings all the way across favoritism in that 10-point range. It's a number that opened 3.5, went to 5.5, then went to 6.5, and then came back down to 5.5. So we're seeing a lot of volatility on this particular game. Stands to reason Hundley could get better with a week's worth of practice with the first team, but that offensive line has just not been getting the job done in any fashion for the Packers. And don't sleep on New Orleans. You know, they've won 3 in a row, and their losses were to some pretty good teams. They get rid of Peterson, and you've got Ingram and Kamara, and Brees can still sling it around. New Orleans actually may be a sneaky team in the NFC this season. Arizona and the Rams. Rams 3.5 to -3.25. So hovering around that key number. Total on the game is 47. I think with the Rams, obviously much, much better, but it's still one of these teams that I think looks like they can run hot and cold. Dallas comes off the bye. We start to consider the byes now. Take extra time to prepare into account. Dallas is 6-point favorite. The total's on the rise from 46 up to 47. Specifically, the totals are all over the place. There's 46, 46.5, and a 47. Shop for the numbers. Do your homework on that game, specifically with the total. Seattle now laying 6 on the road against the Giants. Total on the game is 39.5. Don't forget, and we're talking a West Coast team traveling east, is never easy. Denver and the Chargers. Denver was a 1-point favorite. This has swung back now. The Chargers are 1.5-point favorite. Total on the game is 42. Familiarity, division foes. And then we get a high-profile game. What would we call it? A Super Bowl rematch? Revenge, obviously, for Atlanta. The total on the game is the story here. 54 up to 55. New England's defense has been really ordinary this year. And we know Brady can still put points on the board. That is a game that has track meet written all over it. And then the Washington-Philadelphia game, 4.5 up to 5. Philadelphia's now the favorite in that game. Total on the game is 48.5. Nice story so far for the Eagles, 5-1. It's so hard to repeat as champ in the NFC East. It's been forever since it's happened. The Eagles in control right now. But this is a Washington team. There is familiarity. Could be a much more interesting game than people might give it credit for. It's another week of the NFL coming up. Always trying to set ahead of the line movements, the injury news and notes. But the Rodgers injury could now have tentacles, not only for the Packers, but for other teams like the Saints and the Vikings. Watch the future market and see what happens there. Always a pleasure to be with you. Bang the Book. Don't forget, follow along on Twitter and the Sports Betting Podcast. BangTheBook.com.